Hey, adventurers, Kylan here. And so, just want to let you guys know that I got a new adventure for you. This one is kind of long. I have with me, I'm interviewing Bobby Nash. Bobby is the writer of one of my personal favorite series, Snow. He has also written uh, one of the adventures, or a couple of the adventures for Lance Starr and the Sky Rangers. He's also written a book called In the Wind that's part of a larger series that he's working with as well. So, Bobby is super awesome. It actually just turned out to this big just hangout between the two of us. And it looks like, well, you know what? I just want you guys to listen and then you'll see what I'm talking about. So just kick back, grab a beverage, and enjoy.
Okay. Bobby, I've read two of your books, thoroughly enjoyed. Actually, wrong, three, because I read two of your Snow books, and I also read uh, the uh, the Pulp Action. Was the Pulp Action one? The guy's a pilot.
Oh, right, the Lance Starr character. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. And I enjoyed that one as well. So you know what? Just we can just jump right into this. I'd like to know, what was your journey? How did you get into writing?
Well, actually, my grand dream was to be a comic book artist.
Okay.
I never thought about writing. I just wanted to draw, and it just turns out I'm not that good. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough for people to pay me to draw. But I started writing stories to have things to draw.
Okay.
And other artist friends of mine were like, "Hey, you're actually pretty good at this. Have you thought about just focusing on the writing side?" And so, yeah, it sunk in, and I kind of was like, okay, I focused on writing scripts for other people to draw, and excuse me, a few years later, I actually sold some work to Avatar Press. I did a book called Demon Slayer.
Okay.
That was there. They had moved over from Image. I was the scripter on the book had left, and I took over, and that was more of a collaboration because the artist owned the character, so the
Okay.
artist plotted the story, and then I would write the script based on the plot and the art.
Okay. All right.
And usually it's over the telephone. We would talk. He's like, "Here's what I'm thinking," and then
All
run
right.
with it, And
Right.
so I did that, and that was my first professional writing gig was doing that, and that was probably about 2000.
All right.
My first published stuff was in '92, and I did some indie stuff and little stuff here and there. I did some stuff for a newspaper. I did comic strips for a newspaper for several years, but in 2000 I did that first comic, and while I was doing that, I was dabbling with writing a novel just to see if I could do it.
Okay.
And I wrote a novel, and it was awful, terrible, horrible, but I finished it, which kind of like, pumped me up to do another one.
Right. Right.
So I attempted a second novel, and I sold that novel. That was Evil Ways, which was my first published novel.
Mm-hmm.
I sold that to a small publisher, which turned out to be a horrible, horrible experience. But I had a book.
Right.
There was a book in my hand, a novel in my hand with my name on the cover. And I was doing a lot of conventions for the comic stuff, anyways. And so I, I remember the book came out the week before Dragon Con, which is a big con here in Atlanta.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And yeah, and so I was a guest there, and so I'm excited. I've got books, and I'm showing off the novel to everybody because this is a huge accomplishment, to
Right.
me. And so in the course of that weekend, because we were talking about this is the Lance Star connection here.
Okay.
Ron Fortier was sitting at the table next to me,
Okay.
and Ron and I had never met in person, but Ron, we knew each other online. Ron did comics, and he had written like the Green Hornet and did a bunch of other comics and various things.
Mm-hmm.
And over the course of that weekend, he was telling me that they were in the process of putting together this pulpy anthology series that they were going to do. They
Okay.
didn't have a name yet. Like, it wasn't called Airship 27 yet. It didn't have, I don't think any of that stuff was, they were still in the very early processes. And I was like, oh, well, that's cool. And he went home with a copy of Evil Ways. And a month or so later, I get a phone call from Ron going, hey, we're going to do new pulp stuff. We're going to do new stories with pulp characters and pulp sensibilities. And sometimes we're going to create some new characters that are in the pulp vein.
Right.
And we think your style fits that perfect. Would you like to write some pulp stuff? And I'm like, absolutely. I just have one question. What's pulp stuff? But I had no clue there was a name for it, but it's this action adventure kind of thing that I enjoy writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that led to me working on the first Lance Starr story.
All right.
And and that kind of built from there. So we've done quite a bit of that. And I'm working on a Lance Starr novel for next year. I'm working on that right now.
Nice.
So,
okay.
Yeah. And so there's been a lot of so there was a lot of that action adventure writing that I liked. And so now there was a name for it. I knew what it was called.
Right.
And so I did a lot of that stuff. And so that was fun. I got to write some of the classic characters like Secret Agent X or the Spider, which was pretty cool, or the Avenger, or Domino Lady. I don't know if you can see that. Domino Lady.
Oh, yeah.
And there's Lance Starr up there in the corner. I'm pointing to the computer like you can see me. Sorry. That's Lance Starr up there in the corner.
Yeah, well, oh, cool.
And
well, and I was familiar. I didn't realize the Domino Lady, because I'd seen some of the Domino Lady comics from other companies. I didn't realize the Domino Lady was was an older pulp character. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, she had 6 stories that appeared in 1936, I want to say is the right year.
Mm-hmm.
But she only appeared in 6, and that was it. And they're really good. When they decided that they were going to do this anthology, that's the cover for.
Mm-hmm.
There was a company that put out a reprint, like a nice hardcover reprint of them. Had a beautiful Jim Steranko cover. And I think he wrote a story that was in there also. So he was the first one to write a new Domino Lady story.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And so I bought that so I could read the original stories. Mm-hmm. And I just fell in love with this character. She's a little bit Batman. Mm-hmm. She's a little bit Robin Hood. Mm-hmm. She's quite intelligent.
Yes.
And her gimmick was, and she fought like typical pulp stuff like mobsters, crooked cops, crooked politicians,
right,
evil businessmen, that sort of thing. But she had this gimmick where she would sit down with black paper with white ink and she would write them these letters that says, I know what you did. Here's what I'm going to do to you for doing it. And she would send it to them. And so the bad guys are now suddenly on guard because, well, she's coming. We'll be ready for her. And then she would outsmart them. She would use that against them because they thought they could handle her knowing this was coming, and she would find creative and clever ways to do it. She would usually take them down or get the goods on them so they were arrested. But then she'd rob them blind and she'd live off the, whatever she stole.
Right.
So just a fantastic character. She was considered part of the spicy pulps back then because she had sex.
Yeah.
They didn't show it. They didn't write it. It's kind of like those old movies where they go in for the clinch and the camera shoots off to the corner. It's the literary
what's
version
going
of that.
on. Then they're like crashing waves and
yeah, there's a lot of innuendo. There's a lot of talk about the shape of her lips and the cooing sound, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And that stuff is still prevalent in a lot of what we do today.
Right.
There's like 4 different publishers doing Domino Lady stuff now, and my particular publisher, they do a lot of innuendo titles. Like this was called Sex as a Weapon. Mm-hmm. There's one called Gentlemen Prefer Domino Lady. I wrote a political thriller novel called Money Shot. So there's a lot of innuendo in the title still. So, and right, because I wanted to call it Strange Bedfellows. I thought that was clever, but my publisher was like, no, Money Shot, we're good. And so off to the races we go. But she's a fantastic character, and one of those characters too that, unlike so many of the others, nobody knows who wrote them. because they were written under the house name of Lars Anderson, who they've clearly over the years have said was not a real person. It was just the house name.
Right.
So no one knows who created the character, who wrote them, or anything. But just a fantastic character that I write whenever Moonstone calls and says, "You want to do a Domino Lady?" Yes, I will. She's just fun.
Well, yeah, Moonstone was I'd seen some Moonstone comics. That's what surprised me. Plus, Moonstone has a special place in my heart because they continued the Buckaroo Banzai, or for at least a little while they had the Buckaroo Banzai license. So they had done some books with that. So and you know what? So tell us about Abraham Snow. Because this, I would tell you, like, as I was reading, especially the first book, I could already hear that 80s, 90s type theme song in my head. And I'm like, this feels like something I would have been sitting down and watching, so yeah. So tell us about that. How did you come up with the character?
You are absolutely right though with that, because when I started this, it's like, this is my love letter to the cop and detective shows and books that I grew up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s reading. There's a lot of Jim Rockford in there, or Magnum PI in there, or those kind of things.
Right.
Where there's a flashy car, there's a lot of like action and chasing and fighting, and and I just wanted to recapture that feel. And so, I mean, it's set in the modern day, so it's not like a parody or anything. It's just, straight up, but it has that kind of just the feel of telling those type of stories. And so the idea came, this is one of those weird stories where the idea came. I'd been working on some, as writers, we keep various things. You get little snippets of things and they just kind of live in your brain.
Right.
And you don't know where they fit, but one day they'll pop out. And I had this character in my head called Abraham Hunt. And I was like, I don't know what I thought about it. He would be a good bounty hunter. I even had a title. I was going to call it Hunt's Bounty. And I'm going to tell this story. But then nothing ever came from it. And so it lives there. And so this publisher was starting up that was looking for novella length ebooks. They were just going to do ebooks only. And it was like, actually the guy was in the music business. And so he was going to take how they download music for their customers. Right. They were going to try to do that with ebooks. And so I get a call from a friend of mine who's like, "Hey, I'm working with this new company now and they're looking for people. Can he call you?" I'm like, "Sure." So they call me and we're talking and he goes, "Okay, give me a pitch." And I'm like, "Oh crap, I didn't have a pitch ready." And so I pulled this idea out of my head, this Hunt idea. But I don't know what happened during that phone call. I didn't refer to him as Hunt. I said, "I got this guy called Snow." And I don't know where it came from. It just popped out. And so I kind of, and then I didn't want him to be the bounty hunter. So a lot of it changed, but I kept the Abraham part.
Right.
And actually I'm working on a Snow book now where he's actually going to meet Hunt. His name's not going to be Abraham Hunt anymore, but yeah, I'm going to have them meet because I just.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
Yeah. Because nothing ever gets, it all lives up there forever until I use it. And so I pitched it as, well, if you're looking for novella length things, I'm thinking that made me think, ooh, like it's like a TV show. We can have things that carry on like, shows do now, the beginning and the end of the episodes, the big story, but then they stop and handle whatever the episode of the week is.
Right.
So I thought that would be cool. I could do that. And so I just started spilling out, just vomiting out ideas right there on the phone, scribbling over here with this hand, writing it down because I didn't have it written down anywhere. And he liked it and said, "Great, do it." And so I put together a pitch and I wrote the first one and just sent it to them and they liked it. And then it came out and then the publisher had some troubles and ended up going away. Right. And so when I got my rights back, I was going to try to shop it around again. But at that particular time, I couldn't find any publishers that were really interested and doing standalone novellas.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little ahead of the curve because several publishers do them now.
Right.
But so I was like, okay, I'll just do them myself,
Mm-hmm.
because it was either that or rewrite them, and I thought they would lose something if I stretched this 30,000 word story out into a 60,000 word story.
Right.
I thought it would lose something,
Mm-hmm.
and so I started doing them myself through my tiny imprint,
Mm-hmm.
and just figured I'd get the first few out and get it out of my system and go on to more paying work and things like that. But I really come to like the character. I enjoyed writing the character.
Right.
And then the really weird thing happened. People liked the character. People are
Yes.
asking questions. People are coming up to me going, when's the next one? So, and anytime you find something that their audiences grab onto, you're like, oh yeah, let me do more of that.
Right.
And
Right.
so there's a lot of, the first 6 are one big story. If you read all 6,
Okay.
one huge story,
Mm-hmm.
but there is a plot that gets wrapped up in each one,
Right.
like the TV show type thing. And so I sat down and started coming up with characters to play off of Snow, characters that could come in and out. I mean, he is the character. It's not an ensemble book, it's his book.
Right.
But there are characters that are in and out of his life, and like Big John Salmon is his friend, who may be in this book but not in this one.
Right.
They're in and out. And so I just started writing these action, what I would like to read, and started coming up with cool plots, and it's a lot of fun. And so, like I said, people kept going, ooh, I like this, let's do more. And so just more ideas came forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd always had my idea of Ben Books, which is my publishing imprint, as being a sideline thing. I would do it around stuff I did for other publishers. And right about the time all this pandemic stuff hit, suddenly I found myself with more time because I wasn't doing conventions, we weren't traveling, and I was like, well, if I'm ever going to give my company a shot, this would be a good time to do it. And so I started putting a little more effort and time and trying to schedule them, as opposed to just doing them when I had a hole in my schedule.
Right.
And so for this year, I invited other authors to write stories.
Okay.
I reached out to some authors I knew, who, I figured it was easier that way. Start with people, that way, it's easier to deal with and get things going.
Right.
And so having them write like just a short story, a 10,000 word short story that we would release as like a 99-cent ebook, it would allow them to have something out there. Hopefully their fans will read it and go, ooh, let me read more of this. So there's cross promotion ideas. And then, every three short stories is 30,000 words. So that's the size of the novella. So every 3 we collect it in paper.
Right.
We'll do a collected ebook, and we'll have an audio book.
Right.
So it's multiple ways to get the word out. But it was really cool to see how others, interpreted the characters. And it was also terrifying, letting someone play with your toys.
Well, yeah.
It's, but I've been very fortunate. I've loved all the stories I've gotten. I haven't had, nobody's done anything that made me go, nothing's, and there's also been things that have popped into them that I go, ooh, I like that character trait. That's going to come into my books and things like that. To kind of, like Gary Phillips wrote one where with Big John Salmon, and Big John is Snow's best friend, but he also works for his grandfather, and he can drive anything. He could drive a brick if you put wheels on it.
Right.
And but he had spent some time in prison, and because he ended up putting those skills to use stealing cars as opposed to driving them, or just driving them. And so Gary wrote this story about him going back to help someone who had been in prison with. And it was a really good story, but there's a bit in there where he talks to Archer, which is his boss.
Right.
And he the way they talk and the way they referred to each other, there was a shorthand there that I had not done, and the way I had them talk, that I like so much that I'm going to kind of incorporate that shorthand in how they would talk in future, future stories that I write. So
Right.
little things like that where it's expanding and building the world, and it's part of the plan was too is to get a lot of stuff out with the characters this year
Right.
to kind of, we're trying to grow that audience and that brand. So I'm happy with it. It's I wish it sold a little better, but I could sell 1 million copies and I would probably still say that.
Right.
But but yeah, it's been a lot of fun that way. Plus, it allows me to keep working on the other books while this stuff is happening, and to keep Snow stuff coming out. So I'm pretty happy with that. And book 6 should be out in either November or December. It's at edits right now.
Okay.
So as soon as it gets back from edits and we do some production, and so hopefully November, maybe December. So yeah, it's been fun. And like I said, I've already started on book 7, and I've got more Snow shorts, the short stories in production as well. So yeah, I'm very happy with the character.
Well, I know that when I read the description for Snowfall, and I was like, okay, this seems like right up my alley. And so, and the weird thing is, like, when I did some searching, and because I had seen on some of your, because we're friends, and we're in some similar groups together.
Mhm.
And also I was noticing some of your photos, you had some Snow posters, like,
Mhm.
and I was like, okay, I'm like, and the weird thing is, like, in my head, I don't know why, like, in my head, I picture Snow looking more like Christian Kane. I don't know why, like, in my head, he sounds and he looks like Christian Kane, because I know he's from Atlanta,
Mhm.
so I kind of gives him that kind of bit of that Southern vibe, and especially from his time in whichever agency he was working for, he just seemed, and he was all doing all the other undercover stuff. I just pictured him being like that, but then I see the poster and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, but it was still cool though, because like I see this mix of Christian.
I don't have one. I don't have one handy to reach, but yeah, the original covers have this. Dennis Calero did the cover for the original run, where it's a very. It's like, these are Jeffrey Hayes posters here, and they're more movie poster style, realistic art. Whereas Jeffrey did where Dennis did a very silhouetted, almost design of just a guy with the gun.
And those are the ones
like.
I have. Like, it's all white, and then there's like there's silhouette and the gun, and and then red is like snow.
Yeah.
Like a snowfall, and then snow. I keep wanting to say Snow Drive. That's the third one.
That's the third one. Yeah.
Snowstorm.
Yeah, and so the first 6 all use Dennis's design,
right?
Where it's just different colors. Now with book 7, Jeffrey's going to take over doing covers.
Oh, nice.
This particular poster here, this is the poster for the first 6 books.
Okay.
There are things that happen in each book, like the Snow Drive up there, Snow Falls there. That's Snow Star. So there's bits from each. So we're actually talking about doing an omnibus sometime next year. It puts all 6 in a hardback, and if we do, that's the cover.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's our plan going forward. It's going to have to keep that going. But the first thing Jeffrey asked me was like, "Do you have a particular actor or look or model in mind?" And what I did was, I didn't want to nail it to one person.
Right.
And I gave him like a few different, it's like kind of like these people. And so he kind of came up with an amalgamation based on kind of the looks.
Yes.
And yeah. So, and I could definitely see Christian King. Oddly enough, someone asked me, because I get the question a lot, who would you want to play the characters?
Right.
And I hate that game, because I don't want to get stuck.
Right.
I don't want to say I want it to be Christian Kane, and then 20 years from now, well, he's too old to play this guy.
Right.
But a lot of times I think of it too in terms of not so much the look, but who could pull off the attitude. And
Yeah.
certainly I think he could. And actually I put one of the earliest bases was Joe Flanagan, who was on Stargate Atlantis.
Yes.
I kind of thought of him.
Okay. Yeah.
But I also said I could see Aldous Hodge playing this. Now he doesn't look anything like this, but he's got the attitude.
He does. Wow.
That, he could pull. I think he could pull that character off, and because he's a fantastic actor, I could see him in this role. So yeah,
it sounds like you, considering that you mentioned Aldous Hodge and Christian Kane in the same sentence. I take it you're probably a Leverage fan.
Oh, love me some Leverage. Yes, I was so glad to see it come back.
Yes. Well, did you ever watch? What was it? Almost Paradise.
Yes, I've enjoyed that as well. Yes, quite good. And again, that's the same kind of style.
Yes.
The same kind of storytelling style that, to kind of fish out of water, because, Snow, he didn't have the greatest of childhoods. It wasn't bad. It wasn't like traumatic, but he never fit in and all this. And he leaves home, like he graduates from high school, walks off the high school field, enlists in the Army, and he's gone. He doesn't say goodbye. He's just gone. And he's gone for over a decade.
Right.
Where no family, there's very little contact. And so then he gets tapped into this undercover work and doing special, off the book stuff with the Army, and then over into a fictional government, group that I created. And so he's doing that, and he's quite content to spend the rest of his life doing that. But what I enjoyed was taking him out of his comfort zone. So the first chapter, this is not a spoiler much because it's on the back cover. It's the first chapter of the book. His cover is blown and he's shot and left for dead.
Mm-hmm.
So suddenly he is no good for this.
Right.
His cover's blown and he can't really do the work as much because there's shrapnel like half an inch from his heart.
Yes.
So he's retired. They retire him. And so he doesn't have a life outside of that. So the only thing he knows is where he grew up. So he goes back home.
Mm-hmm.
Now his family is, for the most part, very welcoming. His grandfather gives him a place to live while he recuperates and helps him find work to keep busy because he understands, this last case is going to haunt you. So we're going to help you solve it. Because he does spend a lot of time trying to find the person who shot him and find the person who blew his cover and all that stuff. So, plus he still has enemies out there. He's put away people in the decade or plus he's been undercover. So there's a lot of that stuff. And so, but he ends up having to reintegrate into his life, which is not always easy. And so, but I've enjoyed putting him in that uncomfortable place and trying to make him kind of readjust to it and make things happen. And he's used to depending on himself,
right?
Because undercover, they drop you in by yourself. There's people there, but they're not like easy to they're not close,
right? Yeah, you're mostly on your own.
Yeah. And so now he's got his friends trying to like keep him one from hurting himself, because he does tend to leap first. And now he's got this health condition that could kill him, if he's not careful. And so, and he doesn't always think things through. A lot of times he does tend to leap into situations that probably will one day kill him.
Right. So. Well, I mean, the in the opening, to a Snowstorm, I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, I'm confident that he's going to survive that first part, but I'm sitting there like, is he going to end up having a heart attack? I mean, because he's, and you write, you have this ability to write that tension that I'm sitting on the edge of my seat. And a lot of times I'll be reading this before I'm going to bed. So I'm like, I got to finish chapter. I'm in the middle of a chase. I can't go. I got to figure out how this is going to happen. And, the fact that now, because I grew up in the South, and so, you're talking about like the rural areas, like, the most of this takes place in and around Atlanta, you know, but you know, once you're a lot of southern cities, once you're outside the city, it pretty much goes from city to straight farm.
Yeah.
And you know, the description of that especially the chase scene at the beginning of Snowstorm. I'm reading that and I can see it and I can feel it. And it's you know, it's one of those things that I'm like, you know, I can hear the music, but also I'm kind of like, not that I'd ever done that personally myself, but I could see that happening.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, and the beauty of living, because I do live out, you know, I'm probably 50 miles east of Atlanta. So I'm not out in the middle of nowhere, but the middle of nowhere is not far away.
right.
And I live in an area, we have dirt roads here. There are, you know, out of the way places. And sometimes as part of the research, I don't do it at speed, but I'll go, you know, as we're traveling. My dad and I travel quite a lot, you know, since the pandemic started, you know, we would just get out and ride. So we would, you know, not really go anywhere, just going just to get out of the house.
Right.
And so I started taking, you know, I take photos as we're going. And it's like, ooh, this would be great here. And I take a bunch of reference photos so that I can then go, ooh, yeah. So I can go back and look at those and it reminds me of the trip and I can, you know, kind of see where the turns are, see how, and so having put myself in that place, I can kind of, that feeling is there. So I can have that feeling of not just saying, oh, they're driving down the road. I can talk a little more about what it's like to be in that road.
Right. You know, so you got, so now I know you have other stuff that you're writing as well. You have In the Wind, which is your first book in a series now, and that seems like that was an established series, but you're picking that up, or
the character of Sheriff Tom Myers and his deputies. Now I invented this when I was writing Evil Ways. I invented this fictional town and county called Summersville. And that's where Snow lives too. So there's, you make up your own place. You can do what you want.
Exactly.
So in Evil Ways, which was my first novel, the sheriff and his deputies are in it. They are not the main characters, but they're part of the story. They're like second or third, tier characters. When I finished it, this is how much you think it looks like I planned ahead when I didn't. I assumed after Evil Ways I would never write that town or those characters again.
Right.
So I was doing this other novel called Deadly Games, which takes place partly in Atlanta, but there's a part of the story where we do need to get out of Atlanta into a rural area. And this little light bulb goes off that says, wait, dummy, you created your own town. Use it. And so I was like, great, I'll use the town, but I won't use any of the characters. And I don't know why I thought that, but that's what I thought. And so I'm writing it. And as I'm writing the story, ever so often, this little voice in the back of my head would be, wouldn't this be the time you called the cops? And that kept, and finally, so the sheriff and his deputies get work. They show up later in that story. Again, they're not the stars, but they're there. And so ever so often, the sheriff character would remind me, I'm still here. When do I get my story? And I would just ignore him because I didn't have a story for him. Because not all stories are for all characters.
Right.
You want to marry the two up. You want to put the right story and the right character together. And I just never had a story that I felt was strong enough for him to headline, for Sheriff Myers to headline. And then, as so often happens with me, I'll have multiple ideas or scenes that are just in my head, and something will happen and two of them will bump into each other. And I'll say, I've got this idea and this idea. If I put them together, ooh, wait, okay, now I've got something. And that's what happened with In the Wind. I had this idea of a safe house being hit and a witness on the run.
Right.
And then I also had this other idea about, trying to do this as non-spoilery as possible, but of someone coming to town who's doing this thing, and on their own, neither of them was enough for a full story.
Mm-hmm.
But when I realized they were part of the same story, then it became, ooh, now I've got something. And so I wrote that, and you write, and every time I write something, you never know what's going to catch on or what's not.
Right.
And it was one of those things. If I do just the one and that's all, I'm happy because I like the story.
Mm-hmm.
But much like with Snow, the audience liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot of compliments, and so I've actually written a second, which should be out. It's also in editing at the moment, called Such a Night, which is just is another small town adventure. And this one started setting up. And as you're writing, things come up while you're writing that set up future ideas or future stories. You get, as you're going, you write something and you go, ooh, we could follow that, So I've got like 5 of them loosely plotted now. So,
Nice.
so I guess
okay.
he'll be, Sheriff Myers will be around for a while too.
Awesome.
But now all 4 of those books or all 4 of those series have that connection to Summersville. So I have that. So there's several characters now that they're all in the same universe because they've all crossed through either that town or have met each other. Like the sequel to Evil Ways, part of it takes place in Summersville, but there's a U.S. Marshal character that's in it that's helping the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
And then for In the Wind, since it's a federal safe house and a fugitive, the U.S. Marshals get called in. So I use the same guy.
Right.
Why create from scratch every book if you've got some of the same, you can use some of the same characters.
Exactly.
And so I've built this big universe now of interconnected characters that could cross. I keep telling people, one day I'm just going to go nuts and I'm going to go, okay, here's the crossover with all of them. And so because Mac from the Snow books, Mac's an FBI agent, so he appears in the Wind also because he lives in Summersville. So there's little bits like that. There is a Snow book where the sheriff is mentioned. We don't see him; he's not in the book, but he's mentioned.
Okay.
So little things like that. It just gives it that. If you don't read them all, you still understand what's going on. But if you do read them all, there's that ooh, or just like Snowstorm. You said you read Snowstorm, which deals with some mobsters,
right,
crime families. With the pulp stuff over the years, I was writing all these pulp stuff for multiple publishers now. And a lot of the pulp stuff takes place in the 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And so mobsters are a big part of the pulps. And so instead of creating a new mobster every time I needed one, I just created 3 mob families and used them over and over. So in the back of all of these pulp books, like if you read all the pulp stuff I've done, there's these 3 mob families having a war. We're just telling it out of order because the war is, not the main story. So,
but the effects, the fallout from the war is what leads to, or what is the story is about, is what the fallout like. So with Snow here, like we end up finding out that, it blew my mind that. So it blew my mind that the guy that seemed to be a legitimate businessman is actually, a connected mob guy. And, it's so that, all right, so that's so, right. And so but these 2 families have already had a history.
Yeah. And if you read a lot of my pulp stuff, you would know that because it's the same guys. In Snowstorm, you find out who wins, over.
So yeah, I mean, just when you think, and you did that perfect TV moment where I'm like, okay, looks like this is all good, and what?
One of the best compliments I ever got was when Evil Ways came out.
Mm-hmm.
I had a day job. I went to my day job that morning, and I sat down at my desk, and my phone rings, and it's someone in somewhere else in the building. Mm-hmm. And so I go, "Hello, good morning," and like, "You son of a bitch," and I'm like, "What? I just got here. I can't have screwed up yet." And she's like, "No, I stayed up reading your damn book all night because I couldn't stop." And she goes, "I have questions." And so, okay. And it's like, I thought this was the killer. What do you mean it's where, and so I'm going, okay, this was a red herring. This meant, but that was one of the greatest compliments ever, is like, I couldn't stop. And so yeah, that's awesome. Stuff like that just gets you right, and yeah, that's the perks of doing it, is when people say stuff like that, or people really get into it,
Yeah.
or fall in love with a character. Oh my God, if I ever kill Archer Snow, the grandfather, my fans will riot, because he has become
Yeah,
you know
I like Archer, and
yeah,
there's this thing, and like I would like to know. I judging from Archer's age, I could imagine some of the stuff that he had done, and I'm assuming that it was probably tied to stuff that had gone on in Vietnam or around Vietnam. And so,
certainly some Cold War stuff. Yeah,
yes, there's certainly some Cold War stuff, and I'm like, you know, I like. I'm definitely one of your fans, and so you know, don't hurt Archer.
yeah,
That's all I can say.
yeah. No, you're not the first. I mean, I've gotten that threat. Do not. You can kill anybody else. Do not. But Archer is cool. I just wrote one of the short stories I did is an Archer story.
Okay, cool.
It's him in modern day. But a couple of writers that I reached out to do shorts are thinking about writing one about Archer during the Cold War. And so I've given it the green light. They haven't done it yet, but I've said yes, absolutely, do it.
Awesome.
But yeah, because Archer has that. He Abraham Snow is very much a. The apple didn't fall far from Archer.
No,
He's very much like his grandfather, and Archer is so cool because you can say things. You can have Archer say things, because with his age that allows him to act a certain way. He doesn't give a crap.
No,
he cannot give a crap, and it's okay. Or he's got that sardonic wit. And so yeah, he's cool. I love writing him, and he's kind of a same kind of thing. He's kind of an amalgamation of actors when I listen to the voice. Like there's a little bit of Gerald McRaney in there.
Yes.
But there's also a little bit of oh crap, I'm blanking on his name. Wild Wild West. What was the guy? I'm blanking on his name. Sorry, it's awful.
Robert Conrad.
There's a little bit of Robert Conrad in there.
Yes.
That imagine those, a little bit of maybe a Lee Majors in there, those guys, and he's so that attitude that you don't want to mess with this man.
No.
Even though this man's older now and he's not as strong. I can imagine what he was like when he was in his 20s and 30s. He was a badass.
Right.
And so, but he still has that, the smarts and the mentality and the, don't screw with me, kid. And, and so I love writing him that way because it is a little bit different. He's, Snow acts differently than his grandfather does. So there's a great dynamic there. And then having the father, Snow's dad, be someone who he doesn't have a great relationship with. They don't like each other.
Right.
They love each other, but they don't like each other.
Right.
And so, and the father feeling very betrayed, Dominic feeling very betrayed that, that Snow just left without a word,
Right.
So there's a lot of that there. So when you can get to play those characters together, like in Snow Drive, I know you haven't got that for yet, but when Snow Drive, there is something that brings father and son kind of together. It's like, this is one thing we could always agree on.
Right.
And so there's that kind of thing. So the family dynamic is fun. I enjoy playing with that. And then I just, like I said, I just enjoy putting him in these weird, crazy situations. And, the car chase in Snowstorm was a blast to write. A lot of that, I didn't name specific locations, but most of the car chase and the final shootout happen in real locations. Locations that over the years I've gone, I'm going to have a shootout right there one time, or I'm going to, like the spot where the car pops off and goes onto the interstate.
Yes.
It's a real, like there's a road, and I was on this road because the interstate was backed up. So I got off this exit and taking the road that went around. I'm like, the interstate is like right there, and there's nothing but like a little piece of barbed wire between them. If you needed to, you could, because it's a little bump, and he could just, and so it goes in the old mental file cabinet, and when you need it, there it is.
See.
And yeah, so that stuff's fun. I'm having a ball doing it. I love the characters. there's some heartbreaking moments too,
Right.
and like so many other things I do. I know people think I'm crazy when I say this, but the characters, after a while, you get to know the characters, and they will tell me what they will and won't do.
No, I get it. Like I have like one book under my belt, and actually I had a story. I had a scene that was going to go one way. That's how I had it plotted, and then all of a sudden, like the characters took over,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, and as I'm writing, I'm like, no, that's not how this is supposed to go. But in my head, I'm like, they're like, no, it's going to go this way, and so I'm glad to know that I'm not crazy,
Yeah.
because I hear writers say that all the time. Other writers say that all the time. Like, these characters will take a life of their own. Sometimes they'll just hijack your book, and
most of the time it works out for the better.
right. I mean, they
Because-
know.
Right. Like, without giving away any spoiler bit, there was a character that I had intended to appear all the way up to book 6 of Snow
Mm-hmm.
that I kill in book 3 because he needed to die. It just, and so as I wrote it, I'm like, well, this makes this more powerful. What the hell am I going to do now for the next 3 books? This guy had stuff to do. But what happened was, as a result, a secondary character who I didn't have big plans for stepped in and says, no, this is where I take over. And this character comes in and becomes a much bigger presence in the story going forward. So, but it was one of those things, it was not my plan. So that's why my plots tend to be loose plots.
Right.
I know what I want to have happen, but I don't go and I can't outline. My brain does not outline well. I do I call them sign post or plot points. I know I need to do this, and this. And so I'll start at the beginning and go, okay, Snow, you've got to go there. And I'll follow you. Just you get me there. And then I see how he gets me there.
Right.
That kind of thing. Because that allows me to have these little divergences or unique ways of doing things that are not that are unique to that character.
Right.
Because he's doing things his way. And 99% of the time it makes the story better than if I just went straight to that plot point.
Exactly.
So stuff like that, it's awesome. So it's, character. I always tell people character is where I start, because otherwise, I can tell a good story without knowing my characters, but I can tell a great story if I know my characters.
Oh, absolutely.
They will make the story better. So.
Awesome. Well,
I know I totally killed your 20-minute time frame.
No. I mean, because I'm sitting there and I just look, I'm like, holy crap. But I look here, because I'm like in the middle of Leverage Redemption.
Awesome series.
I'm trying to savor it. So, you know what? I know that one of my missions, because my shows are called, each of my episodes are called missions, because I don't know, branding.
Nothing wrong with that.
So one of my missions is definitely going to be on Leverage. Would you like to come on so we can just talk Leverage? I mean, because I get the feeling that you love these characters probably as deep as I do.
Absolutely. Oh, no, I'm there. Yeah, you let me know when, and I am there.
Awesome. All right.
I love these characters. When the show first came on, I was writing for some magazines and newspapers at the time. So I was on their press kit. So I actually got to see Leverage before it came on.
Yes.
I got to see like the advance, and not all the effects were done, but I got to get to see, and so I fell in love with it pretty quickly. But then I actually, because I had contacts at TNT, I pitched them the idea of doing a novel. And this was before, it was before they had signed a novel contract with a publisher. But I didn't get to do it, but I was so happy to see them. And a couple of people I've gotten to know over the years wrote Leverage novels. And
I didn't know that there were Leverage novels.
I think there's 3 of them, 3 or 4. Yeah.
Oh, great.
I know Greg Cox did one.
No. I have more stuff I need to read. Anything but that.
Greg Cox wrote one.
Okay.
And Keithy Candido wrote one.
Okay.
And I think there's a third one. So there's either 3 or 4. I want to say 3.
Okay.
But yeah. And so those were pretty cool. And so those were based on the original early seasons,
The
you know,
first one, okay.
yeah, with Nate and all still there. But it was one of those things. It was one where I fell in love with the characters and
Hmm.
just, was thrilled. And I was very gutted when it went off the air, after
Oh
season
yeah,
5.
that
And
was.
yeah, and
Hmm.
and I'm loving Redemption.
Yes,
The with the it really truly is like reuniting with old friends.
it
So
is.
I kind of feel the way they are because they're together again, and but they're the same characters, but they're also not, because they've had that 12 years of the characters have still been going. So like, even though Parker is not quite what she was before, where she stepped up into a bit of a leadership role,
Right.
she is still crazy as hell.
Yes. And I have to admit that's something that when you see a show come back or a show gets continued or picked up someplace else, you don't. Sometimes it feels like they try to pick up right where it left off,
Hmm.
but the writers gave you this sense that, yeah, it's been 12 years and things have happened. Like, Leverage International did happen. We didn't see. We're privy to some of the things that happened,
Hmm.
because they're still fighting the good fight. And yeah, that show that's one of the few shows I can honestly say I've watched every episode, and if it's on, I'll go back and watch it again
Yeah,
because
multiple times. I've seen them all multiple times. I haven't
yes,
seen now. I did binge the second. I've seen the first half of the season at least twice.
right,
I've only watched the second half once, but I'm planning to watch them again because I did. Unlike you, I burned through them,
yes,
and then I figure I'll go back and watch them again. But there's just a lot of fun to them. They're fun. The characters are great. I love the actors. And even though some of the cast changed a little bit, it still feels like the same show.
it's the same show with just enough new,
Hmm.
just enough, okay, no,
So, and I really hope that we get more of them.
oh,
I hope it does well
absolutely,
enough, and that's one of the things too I've loved about, because when I was growing up, when a show went off the air, it was done, unless maybe you got a reunion movie.
hmm,
But the reunion movies they never lived up to the potential
no,
of the
no,
show because you had to cram a lot into 2 hours.
right, like the Wild
Whereas,
Wild West movies, you're like,
yeah,
uh,
and so,
uh,
but now we're in this because we have so many channels and so many streaming services and opportunities. I think the ability to reconnect and catch up with them later. Like I heard they're going to restart the original Law and Order, and they're just going to
oh,
pick up all these years later. You know,
wow,
um, yeah, they're going to do season 21 of Law and Order, and I think they'll have a couple of the cast that was there. They'll bring in some new people. Um, some other shows have done that where they've brought them back for like reunion seasons,
mm-hmm.
and and it's fun because if these are characters you love, it very much is that whole going back and revisiting friends you haven't seen in years. And I'm excited, and I love the idea. And there's a few other shows I wish they would do it with, but
Oh yeah.
but yeah, fun stuff. It's and as actors too, I imagine the actors are having a ball coming back and revisiting characters that you get to, that they hadn't played in 20 or so years.
Well, yeah, it's like I've noticed that, like, as I managed to follow some of them on social media, and they legitimately love these characters, and Dean Devlin loves the series, and he seems like he has a personal relationship with the actors, and so
Mhm.
there's this just genuine sense of family that's there, and it permeates, and you see it on the screen, and you see it when they're like they're doing their live streams and all that stuff
Mhm.
too. And so it's,
Yeah, and I
yeah,
think
yeah,
I think I think Dean Devlin really is made for television because
absolutely.
his movies don't tend to catch me as much.
No,
He
no.
does, but his TV work, because you can spend that time getting to know those characters. Because I love the Librarians. I thought the Librarians was great.
Absolutely.
Almost Paradise we mentioned. I've really enjoyed that. So I didn't watch. There's another one on the CW. I had The Outpost. I didn't watch that. But
Yeah, I haven't watched The Outpost.
but
I've had friends who watch it and they love it. I haven't, and I pretty much love everything that Dean does, especially everything, all his DTV stuff. So I'm like, I don't know why I haven't watched The Outpost yet. But
well, if you're like me, there's so many things to watch, so little time.
Limited time, yes.
So yes, I just last night finished up Only Murders in the Building, the Steve Martin
That's
short.
on my list.
Oh, so good.
Okay.
So good. And they're half-hour episodes, so it's 10 half-hour episodes.
Okay, I can do that.
That's 5 hours. But so good. I mean, Steve Martin's incredible. And Steve Martin wrote a lot of it, so he helped co-create the show, and so they're all fantastic. It's really good.
Nice.
And so I give that one a big recommendation. So
cool.
But yeah, I love a lot of the streaming stuff. I know we've got way off topic, but some of the streaming channels have I also enjoyed what am I thinking of? Goliath, which was on Amazon Prime. I just finished that one up. The Billy Bob Thornton.
Okay, yeah.
That one's good. And Bosch. I can't speak highly enough of Bosch. So good stuff. It's just, and there's more TV. If I watched everything I wanted to, I wouldn't get any writing done.
Well, yeah, that's a good thing about streaming and DVRs, right? So awesome.
It'll be there when I get to it.
Yes.
So yeah, so I've stopped worrying about things like spoilers because it's by the time I get to it, I'm going to forget anyway.
Right. Wow. Well, you know what? I'm definitely gonna have you back on so that once I finish Leverage, I would love to have you on so we can do a Leverage show.
Absolutely, I am there.
Going to, now that I know there's this thing that's coming down the pike in Snow Drive. Is that the third one?
That's the third one. Yeah, okay. Snow Drive is third. Snow Trapped is fourth. Snow Star is fifth, and Snow Down is sixth.
Okay.
And then Snow Hunt will be 7, and that'll be next year.
All right. So I got plenty. I got plenty more snow to experience.
And plus, we have 6. We have 6. We're about to put out number 7 of the short stories too. Okay. So
awesome.
There's a lot out there.
All right. So thank you for coming on, and thank you for all of this, because I've been looking forward to this. I'm like, well, I'm gonna try and not nerd out, but
hey, that's what we're here for, right? Hey, exactly. This is my second podcast of the day. I spent an hour and a half talking about Captain America: The Winter Soldier this morning, so believe me, nerding out is right up my alley.
That is my favorite. Like, so up until Shang-Chi, and probably depending on the day, that's like my favorite Marvel movie is The Winter Soldier. And I would say Shang-Chi, I would say right now, Shang-Chi is equal. But yeah, I loved The Winter Soldier. That's like my favorite.
Yeah, it's so well done. Yeah, I am a big Marvel fan from the comics going back. So I love the fact that I'm seeing these characters, because we always knew Spider-Man, the X-Men, the big guys they'll get movies.
Right.
Shang-Chi never would have. Black Panther never would have thought they had got their own movie. Ant-Man, no. So the getting all, like even the Guardians of the Galaxy characters, those, who would have ever thought? And
I remember when I first saw the trailer, I'm like, I don't know. And then, somehow Marvel works their magic, and all of a sudden I'm excited to go and pay money to watch a gun-toting raccoon, So
I was the same way. When I saw the trailer, I was like, this might be Marvel's first trip, mistake, because I'm not buying this. Then I watched it, and it's easily in my top 5 Marvel movies now.
Yes.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So I've just learned to trust them. But I grew up, I was, like I said, a big Marvel fan. So seeing some of these characters, even like on the TV show, like when Crusher Creel showed up on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and picks up the ball and chain, I'm geeking out. People are looking at me like, what? I was like, You don't know what that means.
or like in Luke Cage, and when he just show him escaping from the prison, and
Yes.
you get a moment where he's in the classic.
Oh my! I geeked out at the first Sweet Christmas, and people were like,
Yes!
"Why is that funny?" And I'm like,
Yes!
"Trust me." You know.
I was like, I'm sitting on the edge of my seat. I was like, is he gonna say it? Is he gonna say it? And then he said, I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, it's
So-
just it's like, wow, this stuff's in our DNA. It's like, I knew I knew it had hit the mainstream when my mother called me one day, and she goes, "I have a question." I'm like, "Shoot!" And she goes, "Okay, explain Thor to me." And I knew at that moment that Marvel had hit the mainstream.
Yes.
Because if my mom's asking, who has no interest in this stuff whatsoever,
right.
Yeah, I knew we had finally gotten somewhere. And,
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was it for me, except for my mom, it was Black Panther.
Mhm.
But I was like, oh, I got you, Mom.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and I live here, down here around Atlanta where a lot of that's filmed, and so I haven't been lucky enough to get on a Marvel movie yet. I've tried, but I haven't. I was in Doom Patrol. I did a couple episodes of Doom Patrol,
oh,
and I looked a little different. I don't know if you've seen Doom Patrol, but the Dannysons, who are the weirdos, the
yes.
freaks that live on Danny the Street, I was one of them. I had this big, huge beard, like a Santa beard, and oddly enough, they said I looked a little bit like George R. R. Martin, so they put the hat on me. So I had like a George R. R. Martin hat and body glitter, and we were all dressed up, and so it's this big, huge party scene, and oh, it was so much fun. And then there's special effects. We get to like disappear into a cloud of sparkly stuff. Oh, it was so much fun. And so that was just a blast. But I've tried to get on the Marvel stuff, and I haven't really had a lot of success with that yet. But
you know what? I believe it'll happen for you. I'm sending it out there to universe for you right now.
I would have given my left arm to be on one of the Captain America movies, because Cap's my character, But yeah, just.
So, well, we do have a new Captain America movie that's going to be maybe 2023.
Yep,
so
yep.
There's still hope, but
and one of the cool things about living in Atlanta too is I pick out some of the things where they film and go, oh, Madripoor, I know where that's downtown.
Madripoor's downtown Atlanta. Okay,
yeah.
see,
most of Madripoor was filmed, is in Georgia. Wakanda is in Georgia. When they're at the open field is in South Georgia.
Yeah.
The part at the end where Thanos snaps and they're surrounded by like the trees and the rocks. Yeah. That's in North Georgia at Tallulah Gorge.
Oh.
And so that's Wakanda.
But I know the Time Bureau is the
Marriott. Yeah.
Yeah, the Marriott. So yeah, because I've been down for Dragon Con. I'm like, I know that building. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and we're like when Fury and Maria Hill disappear at the end of Infinity War, and you see the helicopter crash. That's right down the street from there. Nice. It's right around the corner. And so so there's a lot of these places where it's just what they're doing. The Black Panther, the High Museum of Art was the museum that they rob.
Oh,
so, yeah, just a lot of cool stuff like that. And but because of all this, we get a lot of events here with a lot of them, and so we have SCAD here, which is the Savannah College of Art and Design, and once a year they do this thing called ATV Fest, which they bring in people from TV shows to talk about the shows. You usually get to see an episode before it airs,
right?
And this was right after Black Panther hadn't been out long when Black Lightning came on the CW.
Yes, okay.
And they filmed it here as well.
Oh,
and so they invited the cast of and the crew of Black Lightning to ATV Fest to show an episode and to do a Q&A thing. And so I remember I was in line for this, and we were outside. It was kind of chilly, but we were outside in line waiting to get in. And there were a lot of people there. And I remember this family in front of me were there, and they're like, we don't really know what this is, but we loved Black Panther so much, and we were told if we liked that, we would probably like this.
Okay.
And so it was really cool to introduce so I'm like, well, I've watched the show and I'm familiar with the comic, so I was we were talking a little bit about, the characters and what they do and all this stuff. And so it was just, there's a lot more people that are getting to know these characters that I grew up going, man, I wish more people would read, like
Yes.
the stuff we got made fun of, for liking as a kid, or as a teenager.
Right.
Now people are coming up and going, okay, you got to explain this. I was like, I could have explained this to you 20 years ago, dude.
It would have been easier if I explained to you 20 years ago. Now you got an additional 20 years of history to keep on what I was going to tell you then. But okay.
Yeah. So, but I love it. It's a great time. It's a great time to be a fan of this stuff.
It really is.
I'm very excited. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you know what? So yes, I'm gonna wrap this up here for now.
Because I'll keep talking if you don't.
Oh, and I will too. So, but thank you for making time for me today, and thank you. And I know my adventurers. They're all hopefully we got some new readers here as well. Because I certainly, I sing your praises. So.
So I need all the help I can get.
Well,
sing away.
I will do what I can. So thank you. And looking forward to bringing you back so we can talk some leverage.
Absolutely. That sounds like a fun time because I love that show. Yes.
Absolutely. All right. Well, adventurers, thank you. And you guys take it easy. I'll catch you next time.
If you dig the vibe, like and subscribe. Mission complete.